Now joining us from London via Skype is political analyst Mudher Khaiallah. Mr. Khaiallah, till now, many are saying that the ongoing U.S.-led coalition airstrikes against IS positions have so far been ineffective. Your comments on that?
I don't think that's the case, actually. I mean, I think they have been effective to a certain extent. The targets that, according to the US air-led airstrikes over the past 2 months, so between the 8th of August and 8th of October 2014, and based on daily reports, do report a lot of damage and destruction of a lot of these armed vehicles, and including tanks, about 300 in the past 2 months. It also includes damage to refineries, firing positions and weapons, Islamic State fighters, checkpoints and observations. And although, yes, I agree that it's not as much as we'd like it to, but we all know that the major component of the success of this battle against ISIL will be troops on the ground. But I think you require both airstrikes and troops on the ground. And we mustn't forget what happened at the dam in Mosul, armorly siege near Erbil, the fact that the latest conflict near the Turkish border has been going on for 3 weeks. That couldn't have been sustainable without airstrikes. So I think airstrikes certainly help.
Okay, so how would you then describe the Iraqi army and, of course, civilians who have carried arms against these extremists? I mean, in the end, are they not the ones who are fighting on the ground while these airstrikes face no true threat?
That's true, and I think they are certainly making good ground in Iraq in particular. The Iraqi military, including the Peshmerga, and of course the tribes in areas that have been infested and infiltrated by ISIL members, have made significant gains of villages and towns in the recent 2 to 3 weeks. So therefore, I think you do definitely need to have both to aid these military advances. I mean, until recently, we've seen 3 besieged army units near Ramadi that have been freed by a combination of the army of Iraq plus airstrikes.
Okay, well, many analysts do believe that the Islamic State terrorist group is actually being utilized by Washington to reinforce the U.S. presence in the Middle East. Do you agree?
I think the most likely scenario, even if you would argue indirectly, there is no doubt whatsoever that the United States will see its political interests first in the region. It is a region that is rich in natural resources. It also felt that its own security was under threat. But we mustn't forget that this is not just unique to the United States. Other countries are involved too. If you look at Turkey, for example, their priorities are different from the United States and other regional powers. Their priority was to topple Assad, followed by the PKK, and ISIL only come a last third. Indeed, even just today, Yasin Aktay, the vice chairman of Turkey's governing AK party, commented about the Kobane crisis, that these are 2 terrorist groups, the PKK and ISIL, fighting against each other. And there's a lot of analysts suggesting that there are still a lot of civilians left behind in Kobane. So the United States, Turkey and other regional powers do put their priorities first and their political preferences first, and a lot of it is unethical, unfortunately.
Okay, let's talk a bit about Haider al-Abadi. Now, he's been Iraq's prime minister since September 8th. Would you say that he has dealt with the country's crisis in a proper manner?
I think most analysts and most people who've been following the crisis in the region over the past few years know that governing Iraq and being the prime minister of Iraq is certainly an unenviable and difficult task. He will always face criticism. You have differing ethnic and sectarian groups within Iraq, and there's differences within these groups themselves. I think so far, though, Haider al-Abadi has been consistent in delivering his messages. He is realistic about the weaknesses and the weak points of Iraq, and the fact that he has to offer and open a new era of positive and inclusive diplomacy, nationally and internationally. The only way that Iraq can regain its sovereignty and maintain peace and rebuild its infrastructure is by keeping the regional powers and other predominantly Western powers as allies with Iraq. We've got a long way to go. If he fails, however, and this is a huge amount of pressure on him, of course, if he fails, then the likelihood is that we will have partition in Iraq, and it's likely that it will only occur after a bloody civil war. So I think there is positive progress thus far, but only time will tell. I think the next year or 2 will be crucial.
Okay, well, Mr. Mudher Khaiallah, political analyst there from London, thank you very much for joining us. And still coming this hour's bulletin. Student groups resumed their protests in Hong Kong after talks with the government collapsed.